Emma Cole had never been farther than the state line of Virginia. Yet here she was, pressed against the cool window of a massive Boeing 747 as it soared above the Atlantic Ocean. Seat 17A wasn't glamorous. It was cramped. The fabric was worn, and the armrest squeaked whenever she shifted. But for Emma, it was the best seat in the world. This wasn't just a flight. It was her first step into a life she had only dreamed about while pouring coffee in a small-town diner. She had saved every tip, every spare dollar for nearly 2 years, waiting for the moment she could finally escape the rhythm of her small world. Emma grew up in Hollow Creek, a quiet place where everybody knew everyone and nothing ever changed. The diner she worked at sat beside an old gas station, and the same customers came in every day, ordering the same meals with the same stories. For most people, familiarity was comforting. For Emma, it felt like a cage. She wanted to see the world, real oceans, real cities, people who spoke languages she didn't recognize, and streets that weren't cracked with decades of wear. But dreams cost money, and Hollow Creek did not pay well. Every day after her shift, she walked home carrying pockets heavy with coins and wrinkled bills. She refused to spend them. She didn't buy new shoes, even when the soles wore thin. She didn't buy a new coat when winter came around. She lived with what she had, telling herself that one day it would all be worth it. The goal was simple, but enormous. Travel to Europe for 1 month. No plans, no family. Just her, a backpack, and freedom. When she finally reached the amount she needed down to the exact dollar, she booked the flight, before fear could convince her otherwise. Now she sat on the plane, heart beating fast, feeling like she had stepped into someone else's life. Clouds drifted like mountains beneath her. The engines hummed. Conversations and laughter filled the cabin. Everything was new and overwhelming. Across the aisle sat a businessman with silver hair and a navy suit neatly pressed without a single wrinkle. Next to Emma sat a mother trying to calm her crying baby. The scent of baby powder mixed with the smell of in-flight meals drifting from the galley. And through it all, Emma couldn't stop smiling. The flight attendants rolled carts down the aisle, offering drinks. When one reached Emma, she asked for water, even though she wanted something else. Old habits died hard. She still wasn't used to spending money on herself, even when she finally had the chance. First time flying. The flight attendant asked kindly. Emma nodded. "Is it that obvious?" The flight attendant smiled. "Only a little. But don't worry, you're doing great." As the attendant moved on, Emma returned her gaze to the window. The world looked unreal from that height. She felt small, yet more alive than she ever had. Hours passed. She watched movies, listened to music, and tried reading the guidebook she had bought secondhand, but her mind kept drifting back home. Not because she missed it, but because she couldn't believe she had actually left. She wondered what her coworkers would think if they saw her now. They often joked that she would never leave Hollow Creek, that people like her weren't meant for big adventures. But here she was, thousands of feet above the ocean, proving them wrong. As night settled, the cabin lights dimmed. Emma closed her eyes, trying to sleep, but excitement kept her awake. Instead, she looked around, studying the passengers. A teenage boy wearing headphones bobbed his head to music. A couple held hands, whispering to each other. An elderly man read a thick book with golden edges. Everyone was going somewhere. Everyone had a story. And for the first time, Emma felt like she had one. 2. A gentle turbulence shook the plane, and the captain's voice echoed through the speakers, assuring everyone it was normal. Emma's heart raced, but she forced herself to breathe slowly. She wasn't used to surrendering control. Life on the ground felt predictable. Life in the air felt like trusting the unknown. Eventually, she dozed off. When she woke, trays of breakfast were being passed out, and sunlight poured through the windows. She blinked against the brightness, feeling disoriented for a moment. Then she remembered she was flying to Europe. It wasn't a dream. The excitement returned instantly. The flight attendant handed her a tray with scrambled eggs, a small bread roll, and orange juice. Emma thanked her and started eating slowly, savoring every bite. Even airplane food tasted like adventure. As they approached the coast of Europe, the captain announced they would begin their descent soon. Passengers pulled up their window shades, revealing sprawling landscapes below. Emma pressed her forehead against the glass again, mesmerized. She saw fields cut into perfect rectangles, winding rivers, and tiny houses that looked like toys. Her chest tightened with emotion. She had made it. She had really made it. The wheels touched down with a gentle thud, and the plane slowed along the runway. Applause erupted from a few passengers. Emma laughed softly, feeling tears sting her eyes as she stepped off the plane and into the airport. Everything felt surreal. She expected a grand welcome, a sense of arrival. But instead, she found herself in a crowded terminal with hurried travelers rushing in different directions. But even that felt magical. The announcements echoed in different languages. The signs were unfamiliar. The air smelled different, new, foreign, exciting. Emma followed the signs for customs, clutching her passport. The officer asked her purpose of travel. Tourism, she said, trying not to sound too nervous. The officer stamped her passport with a thud that echoed in her heart. She smiled at the small mark. It was the first stamp. The first of many, she hoped. Outside the airport, cool morning air brushed her face. Her backpack felt heavy on her shoulders, but comforting. She looked around, unsure where to go first. She didn't have a detailed plan. All she had were notes scribbled in her journal, ideas gathered from travel blogs and videos, places she wanted to see, food she wanted to try, streets she wanted to walk. Emma walked to a bus stop and studied the route map. A woman nearby noticed her confusion. "Do you need help?" She asked in accented English. "Yes," Emma admitted. "I'm trying to get to the city center." The woman smiled warmly and pointed. "Bus 27. It will take you there." Emma thanked her and boarded the bus. She chose a seat near the window again, wanting to see everything. As the bus moved, the city unfolded before her historic buildings. Cobblestone streets, people riding bicycles, cafes opening their doors for the morning. It was everything she had imagined and more. When the bus reached the center, Emma stepped off and looked around with awe. She wandered the streets, her footsteps echoing slightly as she passed through narrow alleys lined with old brick buildings. She stopped at a bakery, drawn by the smell of warm pastries, and bought a croissant. She had never tasted anything like it. The buttery layers melted on her tongue. She ate it slowly, sitting on a stone bench while watching people walk by. For the first time in her life, she felt absolutely free. She walked for hours, taking photos, admiring architecture, watching street performers. She visited a grand cathedral, its stained glass windows glowing with colors. She climbed a hill that overlooked the entire city. Wind brushed her hair as she sat at the top, looking at the rooftops stretching toward the horizon. As the day faded, Emma checked into a small hostel. The room was shared with 3 other travelers, 2 from Australia and 1 from Spain. They introduced themselves warmly and shared stories of their adventures. Emma listened with wide eyes, fascinated by their lives. When they asked where she was from, she hesitated only a second. "A small town," she said. "But I guess I'm not from there anymore." "Not really." They laughed and she joined them. That night, lying in her small bunk, she thought about how far she had come, not just in miles, but in courage. She was no longer the girl who stayed in one place because it was safe. She was Emma Cole, the girl who crossed an ocean with nothing but determination and a dream. Over the next few weeks, Emma traveled from city to city. She took trains, buses, and ferries. She slept in hostels, small inns, and once, on a bench during a missed connection. She tried foods she had never heard of. She learned basic phrases in different languages. She got lost many times and found her way. Again, with the help of strangers, every day brought something new. She visited art, museums, and wandered through markets filled with handmade crafts. She stood at the edge of cliffs overlooking emerald seas. She made friends from around the world. Some she spent a few hours with, others she spent days exploring with. Each encounter left a mark on her heart. One afternoon, in a coastal village, Emma met an elderly woman selling handmade bracelets. The woman spoke little English, but she understood enough to ask where Emma was from. When Emma said America, the woman smiled and placed a blue bracelet in her hand. For courage. The woman said softly. Emma bought it and tied it around her wrist. She wore it every day afterward. In another city, she met a painter who invited her to his tiny studio. He showed her how he mixed colors and painted landscapes from his imagination. He told her stories about traveling across continents in search of inspiration. Emma listened, captivated. He told her that the world was too big to live small. She believed him. There were challenges too. Days when she felt lonely. Times when she missed the comfort of knowing exactly what came next. Moments when fear whispered that she didn't belong among seasoned travelers. But every time doubt crept in, she reminded herself of the 2 years she spent saving, dreaming.